Divers and people who spend a lot of time underwater, what's the creepiest, most unexplainable thing you've seen while in the depths? When I was a kid we used to go to a place during the summer holiday which had some very nice beaches, and in particular an estuary with a very wide river mouth. One summer there was a king tide where enough of the water emptied out of the river into the ocean that you could snorkel quite easily from one side of the river mouth to the other, as it got so shallow that it was only a meter or so deep at the deepest part. One day I decided to snorkel across from one beach to the one on the other side of the river, and about halfway across, where the depth to the bottom was maybe half a meter, I was swimming along the surface looking down with my mask/snorkel on, and a massive stingray passed directly underneath me. This thing was easily 2 meters across, covered in white scars, and missing its tail. I just froze in the water, and it felt like my heart stopped. If I had let my breath out, I would dropped in the water low enough that I would landed on it. It was so close. I wasn't in any danger, but having a massive creature appear so unexpectedly, so close up, was absolutely terrifying. Edit. To clear up some confusion, the stinger also gone. Just a sort of torn partial stump left of the tail. Got charged by a mother humpback. Her curious calf had swum around us, and we were between her and the calf. Two of us never saw it coming. We were watching the baby, but our third diver watched her come. She kicked down and swam under us last minute. We didn't see anything until that 60-foot freight train passed just underneath us. And this was the day we learned what the whale song for "Don't play with those humans. You don't know where they've been" sounds like. On a night dive in Scripps Canyon, a cormorant rammed directly into my dive light at high speed and knocked itself unconscious. I thought it was dead, but gently brought it back to the surface, where it woke up and took off. As much of a shock that must have been this made me laugh, and that you helped an injured bird made me AWW. I dropped my goggles and was trying to reach down in the river and grab it, but I pulled out a sheep's skull by its sockets. Wasn't as creepy in hindsight, but 10-year-old me was scared. Wasn't as creepy in hindsight, my ass. I'm just lucky it wasn't a human skull. Two biggest. My buddy was taking pictures. He wanted one of me surrounded by a school of fish, so I started tossing out small pieces of hot dog. I was immediately surrounded by so many perch, I couldn't see out. All of a sudden, a largemouth bass snagged one of the pieces of hot dog that was maybe 6 inches from my face. My mask blocked his approach. Scared the crap out of me. Second one was a night dive in very silty water. Visibility was less than 3 feet. Lowest I mark. If I can't see my outstretched arm, it is 3 feet. We were near a flooded structure, maybe an old water tank, at about 35 feet. Something was flashing from our lights. Suddenly, I'm covered in something, and I couldn't see my light reflecting back. I pull it off my face, but it is still black, and I can feel it touching the top of my head. I try over and over to free myself, but I don't feel caught, just covered. Finally, I get clear. It was a large plastic trash bag. Keep your trash out of the water, please. I got told a story once by a Maori language teacher of mine during my time at high school. We didn't learn much Maori, just listened to stories. A dam in the Waikato, New Zealand had begun to have visible cracks in the concrete on the outside part of the dam, and some drivers were organized to dive down and check the inside submerged part of the dam for damage on that side. While they were down there was the usual debris you would find behind a man-made wall which prevents the water from flowing as it would normally do if there wasn't a dam there. Turns out what they thought were large logs were in fact huge eels which had gotten to the size of logs due to being prevented from migrating to the sea, where they breed and die. So from being prevented from doing their natural life duties, they just get larger and larger. That would be creepy, seeing eels deep down in the water just floating around. The shrieking eels from The Princess Bride are the most terrifying thing ever to me. That fear has stuck into my adult life, because no one has ever been able to tell me if they were fake or real eels used in the filming. My brain just can't deal with eels. You can dive in man-made lakes and check out what's left of old flooded homes and communities. It's pretty dark and spooky down there no matter what, especially when you think of all the big fish swimming around that are barely silhouettes until they're close. My buddy likes to dive in lakes. He said the creepiest thing, by far, is finding cemeteries 100 foot plus beneath the water in the dark. Eerie quiet. Someone just dove to the bottom of our lake to check a drain and now he won't go back under cause he said he saw a fish that could swallow him whole. Lol 20 plus feet long he said. Sturgeon. Fish can't be doctors. Edit. Sweet. My highest rated comment. I'd like to thank my parents and apologize to Surgeon Fish. Also, thanks for the shiny things. I had a dive master that told me once he was diving somewhere and found a full skeleton wearing diving gear with the air on the tank turned off pretty deep down. If I remember correctly, they said they reported it to the police and it was found out the man's wife turned off his air while they were on a dive to murder him. A coworker of mine goes cave diving and says that, while not super common, you do find dead bodies in swim gear in caves sometimes. People either go too far into the cave and then run out of oxygen on the way back, or they squeeze past a tight gap and get stuck on the other side, unable to come back the way they came. That must be horrible to be in that situation. I can't think of anything worse. I dive myself, but heard this story from a guarded diver. In 2010 a man took a test drive in a car with a salesman, and in a suicide attempt he drove the car off the pier into the sea and drowned. The salesman managed to escape by breaking the window and swimming to the surface. The divers were dispatched to retrieve the other man's body. This isn't in the news report, which I have a link to below for anyone interested. Simply through working in marinas at the time, I was able to be part of the conversation with the diver in question. When he got to the car, he said the man was still facing forward, hands on the steering wheel, eyes wide. He'd been there a couple of hours now. Where it gets creepy is when the diver opened the driver door. This combined with the smashed window caused the currents to flow through the car and the man's wide-eyed head turned around slowly with the force of it to face the diver. This story is very creepy, but I'm mostly very pissed off at that person who decided their suicide had to involve another person. Why? Why? When living off the coast, some buddies and I would take regular fishing trips out to the oil rigs. We would always have some lines out and a few would dive down and try to spear some mangrove snapper or cobia. Once while I and two others were diving down checking out the structure, we decided we needed to move due to lack of life around the rig. We all get back in the boat, and as one of my buddies is reeling in a line we had a red snapper baited on, an easily 8-10 foot tiger shark starts chewing on it right behind the prop, so close I could have poked his eye out. The idea that massive animal was in the water, so close to me and two of my friends, but no one saw it is terrifying. I bet he was watching us the whole time. Edit. Grandma. Not unexplainable, but gave me a bit of a fright. I worked as a commercial diver for about 7 years in the UK and also some work in Europe. I was working in Orkney, north of Scotland, on the fish farms. One time I swam down one of the bigger nets off Rousay, and it was very dark, very overgrown, and I could see some weird shapes lying in the dead man's sock as I descended. There were a few more dead fish than usual, maybe 100 or so, but underneath them were lying 3 dead seals. Big ones. It was hard to make out because they were covered in fish, but one of the seals had a big fucking chunk of it missing. And that's when I looked up and saw a 4-foot tear in the side of the net. Fuck that. I was only a newbie at this point. Fish farm work is generally the best way to start a diving career. Doesn't pay the best, but you get plenty of minutes logged, which helps for experience. I told the supervisor, who said get out straight away. They sent one of the more experienced lads in after me, and he fixed the whole sharpish and then rigged the seals up to be lifted out. Turns out the seals had been killed by orca and somehow got through the net in a panic. Orca are quite common up in Orkney and are the only animal we were told you had to get out the water for if seen. Only one of the seals had a bite mark, the other 2 got caught in the net. Not supernatural or anything, but I remember a significant shiver running down my spine that day. Edit. Whoa. More responses than I've ever had on a post. To answer the question about why orcas, I was told by one of the marine environment lads who used to regularly come out on the boats with us that it's a precautionary thing. Wearing black neoprene and fins, you may be mistaken for a seal and become breakfast. To be fair, it's a precaution I was very happy to go along with. We don't get great whites or tiger sharks up here, but I'd imagine in South Africa, India, Australia or etc there would be similar rules. Rescue/recovery diver here. Every time I've recovered a drowning victim I get the creeps. Unfortunately, a lot of people are under the impression that every underwater environment is like the movies, and there's absolute clarity. That's rarely the case. One evening I got called out for a young girl that jumped from a bridge. She likely survived the fall and entry. We have a morbid term for what happened to her upon hitting the water. Plugged, I found her with a surprising amount of visibility in relatively shallow water. She was stuck in the mud to just below her knees, and you could see the fear locked into her eyes/face. There's nothing peaceful about suicide by bridge. That is the most terrifying answer I've read so far. Thanks. When I was a kid swimming in the lake at summer camp, I dove underwater, and I swear I saw someone in scuba gear hiding underneath the dock watching us. I told the lifeguard, but he wasn't able to find anyone. What if there was someone there, and they saw that you saw them, and so they swam away to avoid getting caught by the lifeguard? I assume that is what happened, as a scuba perv is more likely than a scuba ghost. Yeah, which is sketchy as shit. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more videos.